Let's start by taking a look at the steps in the process for recalling a change request in MDG before we work through an example in the system. This sample process starts with step 0 when a change request is created by the requester. Once the requester submits the request, we move to step 10 in the process. A data steward processes the change request with one of two possible actions, agree or disagree. When the data steward chooses agree, the change request moves to step 30. Next, a data specialist processes the change request using one of two possible actions, finalize processing or send for revision. When the data specialist chooses finalize processing, the change request moves to step 90. Here, the approver can process the change request with either activate or send for revision. The customizing has been adjusted to allow for an additional action, recall by requester. The recall by requester action is only available for the requester. If the requester uses this action, the change request moves to step 85. In step 85, the requester could apply changes to the change request and resubmit to the approver or withdraw the change request. By submitting the change request, we move back to step 90, where the approver can then either choose to activate or send for revision. As we take a look at this process, there are of course many options for alternative process flows when different actions are taken. As we work through an example in the system, we will follow this process. Denise Smith requests a new customer by submitting her change request. Julie Armstrong, the data steward, checks the change request. She adds data and then processes the change request with the agree action. This action passes the change request to the data specialist, Michael Moore. Michael performs a customer classification and finalizes processing. The change request is now ready to be activated by the approver, John Miller. In the meantime, Denise, the requester of the change request, recognizes an error. She chooses the recall by requester action, resulting in a recall of the change request. She applies her changes and resubmits the change request. John Miller then activates the change request, moving it to step 99, complete. Now let's take a look at this example in the system. An existing customer, a bakery, has opened a new subsidiary. Denise Smith would like to create a new customer for the subsidiary as a copy of the existing bakery customer. To start, Denise searches for the existing customer on the Customer Governance homepage using the house number and the street as the search criteria. To create a new one, she selects the existing customer from the result list and chooses to copy it with all of its data. She uses a change request type which has been configured for recall. She enters a description for the change request and adjusts the address information. As the subsidiary uses the same telephone number, fax, and email address as the headquarters, she doesn't make changes to those fields. Once Denise has completed the changes, she submits her change request. The change request moves through the process flow to step 10, where the data steward, Julie Armstrong, processes the request. When Julie Armstrong takes a look at the change requests that are to be processed by her, she selects them one at a time. By opening one, she can easily check to see if there are any warnings before processing. In the case of the change request that Denise Smith entered, she sees that a value-added tax registration number is missing. After inputting that information and confirming that there are no further warnings, she is finished with this change request and selects Agree. After Julie Armstrong, the data steward, processes the change request with the Agree action, the change request moves to step 30 in the process flow where Michael Moore, a data specialist, becomes the processor. Michael takes care of the customer classification and adds a fraud classification for the linked ERP customer. He edits the details of this change request to add the class assignment and other characteristic values like review dates, fraud warning, and fraud ABC classification. Once Michael is finished with his changes, he chooses Finalize Processing. When Michael Moore chooses the Finalize Processing action for Denise Smith's change request, it moves to step 90 in the process flow. In the meantime, Denise Smith received updated information about the telephone and fax number as well as the email address of the bakery's subsidiary. Denise Smith opens the change request that she created for the bakery's subsidiary and chooses Recall by Requester. After refreshing the change request, she is able to edit the customer details and input the new telephone and fax numbers as well as the email address. Denise can then resubmit her change request. Upon resubmission, Denise Smith's change request goes back to step 90 for John Miller's approval. When John Miller takes a look at change requests that are to be processed by him, he wants to check the changes made to the change request. After opening the change request and going to its change documents, he prefers the attribute changes to be displayed directly instead of the overview changes. As John is more interested in seeing the attribute changes, he has set the user parameter MDG underscore attribute underscore change with value X in his user profile. In addition, change documents for classification characteristics and characteristic values of data types currency, date, time, and numeric are now displayed in a readable format. Since John is fine with the change request, he activates it and the change request is now completed. As you've seen with these latest improvements to SAP Master Data Governance, a requester can now recall a change request. You can set your change documents view to display the attribute changes by default rather than the change overview, and class characteristics are shown in a readable format. Thanks for watching.